What happens when a man who's been invisible for 20 years suddenly becomes impossible to ignore? Marcus Hill spent 2 decades erasing himself, scrubbing floors, avoiding eye contact, burying a past so painful it threatened to destroy him. He had learned to survive by staying silent, by keeping his hands away from the one thing that once defined his entire existence. But on one frozen November morning in Chicago, everything changed. One moment of weakness, one forbidden touch, one melody that refused to stay buried, and suddenly the world wanted answers to questions Marcus had spent half his lifetime running from. This is not a story about fame or talent discovered. This is a story about secrets that won't stay hidden, about stolen dreams and the devastating price of silence, about a father's grief so profound it shaped every note he would ever play again. Because behind that viral video of a janitor playing piano lies a truth darker and more complex than anyone watching could imagine. A conspiracy, a tragedy, and a reckoning 20 years in the making. What really happened to Marcus Hill? Why did a musical prodigy end up invisible? And what are the powerful people so desperate to keep hidden that they'll threaten everything he has left? Some stories demand to be heard. Some truths refuse to stay silent. And some music is so honest, so raw, so devastating that it changes everyone who hears it. Subscribe to hear stories that will move you. Hit like if you believe second chances matter. And comment where you're watching from. Because this journey is just beginning, and you won't want to miss a single moment. The floor gleamed like black ice under the morning sun that November Friday at the Sinclair Conservatory in Chicago's Gold Coast. Marcus Hill pressed his weathered hands against the mop handle, watching the marble floor turn from cloudy to mirror bright with each stroke. His reflection stared back at him. A 38-year-old black man in a janitor's uniform, invisible to the parade of designer boots and Italian loafers that clicked past him without a second glance. The conservatory smelled like old money and new ambition, leather portfolios, French perfume, the sharp tang of espresso from the student lounge where trust fund kids complained about their private tutors. Marcus had worked here for 3 years, arriving at 5:30 every morning to erase the footprints of people who would never learn his name. But there was one thing in this marble temple that knew him, one thing that recognized the calluses on his fingers and the ache in his chest every time he walked past it. The Steinway Model D grand piano. It sat in the main lobby like a sleeping giant, 9 feet of ebony perfection catching rainbows from the stained glass windows above. The conservatory's crown jewel, a $250,000 instrument that students were only allowed to touch during supervised practice sessions. Marcus had never been told he couldn't touch it, but the message was clear in every raised eyebrow, every suspicious glance from the faculty when he mopped too close to its legs. This morning, the lobby was crowded. It was audition day for the Young Musicians Fellowship, a full scholarship program that could change a kid's life. Anxious teenagers sat with their parents, fingers tapping nervous rhythms on their thighs. Marcus recognized the look. He'd worn it himself once, 20 years ago in a different lifetime. He was wringing out his mop when he heard the voice. "Careful there, Chief. That piano costs more than you'll make in 10 years. Ethan Carrington stood at the top of the marble staircase, descending like royalty greeting peasants. Tall, silver-haired at 45, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $3,000. His smile was the kind that never reached his eyes, the smile of a man who'd never been told no in his entire life. Ethan was the conservatory's largest donor. His family name was carved into the building's cornerstone. He'd funded the new performance hall, the digital music lab, half the scholarships, and he never let anyone forget it. "Just doing my job, Mr. Carrington," Marcus said quietly, keeping his eyes down. Of course. Ethan's shoes, handmade, probably English, stopped right at the edge of Marcus's freshly mopped floor. "Big day today. We're selecting the next generation of musical talent, the cream of the crop." He paused, his eyes sliding over Marcus like he was part of the furniture. Not everyone gets that kind of opportunity, you know. Some people are meant to create beauty. Others are meant to maintain it. The words landed like a slap. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He'd learned years ago that silence was safer than speaking. Silence couldn't be used against you. Ethan chuckled and walked away, joining a cluster of board members near the audition room. Their laughter echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Marcus returned to his mop, but his hands were shaking, not from anger, from something deeper, a hunger that never went away no matter how many years passed. No matter how many times he told himself he'd made peace with his choices, the piano seemed to glow brighter under the skylight. Just one note, a voice whispered in his head, just to remember what it felt like. He looked around. Most people had moved into the audition hall. A few students scrolled on their phones, earbuds in. No one was watching. Marcus set down his mop. His heart hammered as he crossed the lobby, each step feeling like walking through water. His reflection appeared in the piano's polished surface, a ghost of who he used to be. His fingers hovered over the keys. They trembled. 20 years since he'd played a real piano. 20 years since he'd let himself want something this badly. He pressed down. The note sang out, a low, resonant C that filled the lobby like a prayer. Marcus closed his eyes. His other hand found its place. Then both hands moved, and suddenly he wasn't in the conservatory anymore. He was 17 again, playing for his mother in their cramped South Side apartment. He was 21, hearing his son laugh as he played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with tiny hands. He was 30, alone in a prison cell, fingers playing phantom melodies against concrete walls. The music poured out of him, an improvisation that was part Chopin, part gospel, part something entirely his own. A lament, a confession. Every year of grief and rage and swallowed dreams compressed into melody. The lobby fell silent. Marcus didn't notice. His eyes were closed, his face tilted upward, tears streaming down his cheeks. His hands moved like they belonged to someone else, someone who'd never stopped playing, never stopped believing he had something to say. When the last note faded, he opened his eyes. The lobby was packed. 30, 40 people stood frozen, staring at him. Students, parents, faculty members who'd emerged from the audition hall. Some had tears on their faces. Others stood with their mouths open, like they'd witnessed something impossible. And there, at the top of the stairs, stood Ethan Carrington. His face had gone pale. His expression was unreadable. Shock mixed with something that looked almost like fear. The silence stretched like taffy. Then someone started clapping. A girl in the back, maybe 16, with purple streaks in her hair. Others joined hesitantly at first, then building to thunderous applause. But Marcus barely heard it. He was staring at his own hands, trembling on the keys, wondering what he'd just done. Security! Ethan's voice cut through the applause like a knife. Get this man away from that instrument now. 2 security guards appeared, moving toward Marcus. He stood up quickly, backing away from the piano like it might burn him. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry, Who the hell do you think you are? Ethan descended the stairs, his face flushed with anger. That's a priceless instrument. You have no right, absolutely no right. Leave him alone. The purple-haired girl stepped forward, her phone raised. I got the whole thing on video. That was incredible. Delete that, Ethan snapped. No way. She was already typing, her thumbs flying across the screen. This is going viral. Marcus felt dizzy. The room tilted. This was wrong. This was all wrong. He'd broken the unspoken rule. Stay invisible, stay silent, stay in your place. My office. Now. The conservatory director, Dr. Patricia Westbrook, appeared at his elbow, her face tight with controlled fury. Mr. Hill, what you just did was completely inappropriate and… Wait. An older man pushed through the crowd. He had a walking cane and snow-white hair, and his eyes were locked on Marcus with laser intensity. I know you. Marcus froze. Professor Barlow, someone whispered. Henry Barlow, legendary piano instructor, retired 10 years ago. He taught at Juilliard, at Berkeley, at conservatories around the world. His students won competitions. They played Carnegie Hall. That melody, Barlow said softly, moving closer to Marcus. His hand was shaking. The variation in the third movement. I've only heard that once before, 20 years ago. His eyes searched Marcus's face. You were at the Chicago Youth Academy. You were the boy who… I need to go, Marcus said suddenly. He grabbed his mop and bucket, pushing past the crowd. His chest was tight. He couldn't breathe. Everyone was staring, whispering. The purple-haired girl was still filming. Mr. Hill, Dr. Westbrook's voice followed him. We are not finished. But Marcus was already through the service door, down the back hallway, into the janitor's closet where he kept his coat and lunch bag. His hands wouldn't stop shaking as he grabbed his things. His reflection in the small mirror showed a man coming apart at the seams. What had he done? His phone buzzed. A text from his supervisor. Office. Immediately, Marcus sank onto the metal stool in the corner. Through the thin walls, he could hear the murmur of voices, the shuffle of feet. Someone was arguing, someone was crying. And somewhere out there, a video was uploading to the internet. A video of a black janitor playing piano like his life depended on it. A video that would be watched by millions. A video that would force Marcus to confront everything he'd spent 20 years trying to forget. He put his head in his hands and tried to remember how to breathe. The closet door opened. A woman stood there. Camila Rodriguez, the conservatory's administrative assistant. She was deaf, communicated through ASL and lip reading. She'd always been kind to him, one of the few people who looked him in the eye when they spoke. She signed something, then spoke aloud. That was beautiful. Marcus shook his head. It was stupid. I'm going to lose my job. Maybe. She signed and spoke simultaneously. Or maybe something else is starting. Before he could respond, another buzz. This time, a notification from YouTube. Someone had tagged him, though he barely used social media. The title made his blood run cold. Janitor's secret revealed. Watch a cleaning man play piano, better than any graduate Sinclair Conservatory. You won't believe this. The view count was already at 15,000, and climbing. Marcus looked up at Camilla. What have I done? She smiled sadly. You remembered who you were, and now the world won't let you forget. The video hit 1 million views by the time Marcus finished scrubbing the men's bathroom on the 3rd floor. He didn't know it yet. He was on his knees, bleach stinging his nostrils, trying to focus on the grout lines between tiles because focusing on anything else meant thinking about what he'd done. His phone sat silent in his pocket, but the world outside was exploding. Students whispered in clusters throughout the hallways. Marcus caught fragments as he pushed his cart past them. Did you see it? That janitor guy? No way that's real. Their voices cutting off the moment they noticed him. Some stared openly now, phones raised like he was an exhibit at a museum. Others looked away quickly, embarrassed to be caught watching. The conservatory felt different. The air hummed with electricity, with scandal, with something Marcus couldn't quite name. He kept his head down, moving from classroom to classroom like a ghost. But invisibility was no longer an option. Everyone knew his face now. Everyone had an opinion. By 10 o'clock, the comment section had exploded into warfare. Marcus would see them later, would read every single word until they burned into his memory. But right now he was just trying to survive until lunch. Incredible talent wasted cleaning toilets. This is America's shame. How does a man with this much skill end up as a janitor? Something's not right. Y'all really gonna act surprised? Black excellence gets ignored every day. This is what systemic racism looks like. Genius reduced to manual labor. Someone find this man and get him a recording contract now. But there were other comments too. Darker ones. Comments that made Marcus's stomach turn when he finally saw them. Probably stole that talent from a real musician. He's just trying to get famous, it's all an act. If he was really that good, he'd have made it. There's obviously a reason he didn't. The conservatory's main office called him at 10:47 a.m. The secretary's voice was clipped, professional, cold. Mr. Hill, doctor. Westbrook needs to see you immediately. Marcus's hands went clammy. He left his cart in the hallway, walked past staring faces, and knocked on the director's door. His reflection in the frosted glass looked like a man heading to his execution. Come in. Dr. Patricia Westbrook sat behind her mahogany desk, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun, her reading glasses perched on her nose like a weapon. She didn't look up when Marcus entered, didn't offer him a seat, just kept typing on her computer, each keystroke deliberate and sharp. Ethan Carrington stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the Chicago skyline like a king surveying his kingdom. Marcus's heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Do you have any idea? Dr. Westbrook finally said, her voice soft and lethal. What you've done? I'm sorry. Marcus started. I didn't mean to. My phone has been ringing off the hook. She looked up now, her eyes ice cold. News outlets, bloggers, social media influencers. Everyone wants a statement about the genius janitor at Sinclair Conservatory. She said the words like they tasted bitter. Do you understand what this does to our reputation? Marcus blinked. Your reputation? We have donors, Mr. Hill. Major donors who expect a certain level of decorum. A certain standard. Her gaze flicked to Ethan, who still hadn't turned around. You've embarrassed this institution. You've embarrassed Mr. Carrington, who has generously funded this conservatory for over a decade, and you violated policy by using conservatory property without authorization. It was 2 minutes, Marcus said quietly. You just what? Ethan turned now, his face flushed red. You just decided to make a spectacle of yourself? To turn my conservatory into a circus? He stepped closer, and Marcus could smell his cologne. Expensive, suffocating. That piano is worth more than your annual salary, more than you'll ever be worth. And you put your janitor hands all over it like you owned the place. The words hit like physical blows. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, not from the insult, but from the familiar weight of being told he didn't belong, that he never would. I'll pay for any damage, Marcus began. With what? Ethan laughed, sharp and cruel. You think this is about money? This is about respect, about knowing your place. I come here to invest in real talent, in young people with futures, and instead I have to watch some washed-up janitor pretend he's Beethoven for internet clout. That's enough, Dr. Westbrook said, though her tone suggested she agreed with every word. She slid a paper across her desk. Mr. Hill, this is a formal written warning. One more incident of any kind and you're terminated. Do you understand? Marcus stared at the paper. His termination, dressed up in corporate language. I understand. Good. You're dismissed. He walked out on shaking legs, past the secretary who wouldn't meet his eyes, past students who pulled out their phones to capture this moment too. The hallway stretched like a tunnel with no end. His chest felt hollow. His hands felt empty. In the break room, he found Camilla making coffee. She saw his face and immediately signed. What happened? Written warning, Marcus said, sinking into a plastic chair that creaked under his weight. One more mistake and I'm gone. Camilla's face darkened. She signed rapidly, then spoke. That's garbage. You did nothing wrong. I touched property I wasn't supposed to touch. I caused a scene. You created something beautiful. She sat across from him, her dark eyes fierce. Don't let them make you feel ashamed of that. Marcus's phone buzzed, then again. Then it didn't stop. Notification after notification, each one a small explosion. He pulled it out, stared at the screen, and felt the world tilt. 53 missed calls, 216 text messages. His social media, which he barely used, was flooded with friend requests, messages, tags. The video had been shared by major news outlets now. Someone had created a hashtag, Justice for Marcus. Oh God, he whispered. A new notification appeared. A message request on Instagram from someone named Henry Barlow. Marcus's blood went cold. He opened it with trembling fingers. Marcus Hill. I know that's you. I recognize the melody. The one you composed for your senior project at the Youth Academy before you disappeared. We need to talk. I know what happened to you wasn't your fault. Please, let me help. I've been searching for you for 20 years. The words blurred as tears filled Marcus's eyes. 20 years. Professor Barlow had been searching for 20 years. Another notification. This one from a blocked number. A text message. You shouldn't have played. Now they're going to start digging. Delete everything. Stop talking to people. If you don't, everyone will know what you really did. A friend. Marcus's hands went numb. The phone nearly slipped from his grip. He read the message again and again. The words rearranged themselves into a threat that made his throat close up. What is it? Camilla signed, her face concerned. Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't move, because buried somewhere in his past, in the years he'd spent trying to forget, was a secret that could destroy whatever tiny bit of hope this viral video had sparked. A secret that certain people clearly wanted to stay buried. And now that the spotlight had found him, now that millions of eyes were watching, someone was afraid Marcus might finally tell the truth. His phone buzzed again. Another message from the blocked number. Your son wouldn't want you to ruin this. Think about what you're risking. Marcus stood so fast the chair fell backward. His vision went black at the edges. Camilla was saying something, signing frantically, but he couldn't process it. All he could see was his son's face. Little Isaiah, 4 years old, laughing as Marcus played Happy Birthday on a keyboard they'd bought at a pawn shop. Isaiah, who died 12 years ago. Isaiah, whose name no one was supposed to know. Whoever sent this message knew everything, knew the deepest wound Marcus carried, and they were willing to use it as a weapon. He grabbed his coat, ignored Camilla's protests, and walked out of the conservatory into the freezing November air. His breath came in white clouds. His heart hammered against his ribs. Somewhere in the city, someone was watching him, waiting, warning, and Marcus realized with terrible clarity that playing that piano hadn't opened a door to his past. It had opened Pandora's box. The Southside apartment building looked worse in daylight than it did at night. Cracked concrete steps, graffiti on the metal mailboxes, a front door that didn't lock properly. Marcus had lived here for 6 years, in a one-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor that smelled like his neighbor's cooking and leaked when it rained. It wasn't much, but it was safe, anonymous, a place where nobody asked questions about who you used to be. Until now. Marcus climbed the stairs slowly, his legs heavy as concrete. Each step echoed in the stairwell, a hollow, lonely sound that matched the emptiness in his chest. His hands still shook from the text message, the threat, the mention of Isaiah's name by someone who had no right to speak it. He reached his floor and stopped cold. An envelope sat propped against his door. Manila, legal-sized, unsealed. No name, no address. Just sitting there like a landmine waiting to explode. Marcus looked up and down the hallway. Empty. The building was quiet except for the distant sound of a television and a baby crying somewhere below. He picked up the envelope with trembling fingers. It was thick, heavy with papers. Inside his apartment, he locked the door, both locks plus the chain, and sat at his small kitchen table. The overhead light flickered, casting shadows that made the envelope look alive, dangerous. He opened it. The first thing he saw made his heart stop. Isaiah's birth certificate, the original, with the raised seal from Cook County. Marcus hadn't seen it in 12 years, not since the social worker had taken it along with everything else when his son was removed from his care. The paper was yellowed at the edges, creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. But there it was, Isaiah Marcus Hill, born March 15, 2006 at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Mother, deceased. Father, Marcus Elijah Hill. Marcus's vision blurred. He pressed his palm against the certificate like he could touch his son through the paper. Isaiah, his baby boy, the only good thing Marcus had ever created. Beneath the certificate was a handwritten note on lined paper, the kind torn from a spiral notebook. I know what happened. I know why you went to prison. I know about the teacher who framed you. I know about Isaiah. And I know you never got to say goodbye. You think playing piano will change anything? You think people will care once they find out the truth? They won't. They'll call you a criminal, a deadbeat father. They'll say you deserved everything that happened, unless you do exactly what I say. Stop talking to reporters. Stop accepting interviews. Disappear like you've been doing for 20 years. Stay quiet, and your secrets stay buried. But if you don't, everyone will know. Everything. I'm watching you, Marcus. Don't make this worse than it has to be. No signature. No name. Just the threat. Clear and cold as winter. Marcus read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper than the last. His hands crumpled the edges of the paper. His breath came shallow and fast. Someone had been in his past, digging through his life like it was a grave to be robbed. Someone knew about the arrest, the false accusation, the 6 years he'd lost behind bars. Someone knew about Isaiah's death and was willing to weaponize his grief, but how? Who? A knock at the door made him jump so violently he nearly fell from his chair. His heart hammered. He shoved the papers back into the envelope and stood frozen, listening. Another knock. Marcus, it's Camilla. Please, I know you're in there. Relief and panic mixed in his chest. He opened the door just wide enough to see her face. She looked worried, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, still wearing her work clothes. I'm okay, he said, though his voice betrayed him. She shook her head and signed, You're not. Let me in. Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. Camilla entered and immediately saw the envelope on the table. Her eyes narrowed. What's that? Nothing, just... She picked it up before he could stop her, pulled out Isaiah's birth certificate. Her face went soft with understanding, then hard with anger. She read the note, her jaw tightening with each line. Who did this? She signed sharply. I don't know. Marcus sank back into his chair, suddenly exhausted. Someone who wants me gone. Someone who knows things they shouldn't know. Camilla sat across from him, her eyes fierce. Tell me everything, from the beginning. And so Marcus did. For the first time in years, he let the words come. He told her about growing up on the South Side with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to pay for his piano lessons, about being accepted into the prestigious Chicago Youth Academy at 17, a full scholarship, a chance to escape poverty through music, about Professor Gerald Whitmore, who taught advanced composition and hated that a poor black kid had more talent than his wealthy white students. He told her about the night campus security found a stolen electronic keyboard in his dorm room, how he'd sworn he'd never seen it before, but nobody believed him, how Whitmore had testified that Marcus had a concerning obsession with equipment he couldn't afford, how the evidence was circumstantial but damning, how the jury took less than 3 hours to convict him of felony theft, 6 years in Stateville Correctional Center, 6 years of concrete and steel and learning to sleep with one eye open. I was 21 when I went in, Marcus said, his voice hollow. 27 when I got out. My mother had died while I was inside. Heart attack. They wouldn't let me go to her funeral. He swallowed hard. I had nothing. No degree. No prospects. A felony record. But I had Isaiah. Camilla's expression softened. She signed, "Tell me about him." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. His mother, Keisha. We dated in high school. She got pregnant senior year. We were going to get married after I graduated from the academy. His voice broke. But then I got arrested. And Keisha, she had complications during delivery. Died 3 days after Isaiah was born. He pulled out his wallet with shaking hands, removed a photograph worn soft at the edges. A little boy with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile, sitting at a keyboard, hands poised over the keys like he was about to play a symphony. He loved music, Marcus whispered. Just like me. I taught him everything I could remember. We lived in a shelter for a while, then a friend's couch. I worked whatever jobs I could get with a record, dishwashing, warehouse, night security. And every night I'd play for him on this cheap keyboard we got from Goodwill. Camilla touched the photo gently. What happened? The words came slowly, painfully, like pulling glass from a wound. Pneumonia. He was 4 years old. We couldn't afford a doctor until it was too late. By the time we got to the ER, Marcus couldn't finish. His throat closed up, chest heaving with sobs he'd held in for 12 years. Camilla moved around the table and wrapped her arms around him. He collapsed against her, crying like the world was ending all over again. For a long time, they sat like that, Marcus breaking apart, Camilla holding him together. When the tears finally stopped, Marcus pulled away, wiping his face. After Isaiah died, I stopped playing. Completely. Music reminded me of everything I'd lost, my mother, Keisha, my son, my future. So I found the quietest job I could. Janitor. Invisible. Safe. He laughed bitterly. Until yesterday. Camilla signed firmly. Someone's trying to silence you. Someone who's afraid of what you represent. Or someone who knows I'm a fraud, Marcus said. I'm not some hidden genius. I'm an ex-con who couldn't save his own kid. Maybe that person's right. Maybe I should just disappear. No. Camilla's hands moved sharply, emphatically. That's what they want. They want you afraid, ashamed, silent. She picked up her phone, scrolled, and turned it to face him. The video had 14 million views now. The comments had multiplied into thousands. But it wasn't just comments anymore. It was movement. People sharing their own stories of buried dreams. Musicians offering to collaborate. Lawyers offering pro bono help. A crowdfunding campaign someone had started without Marcus's permission had already raised $40,000. People believe in you, Camilla signed. They see something real. Something worth fighting for. Marcus stared at the screen. At the version of himself playing piano, tears streaming down his face, completely lost in the music. He looked free in that moment. Alive. There's a radio show, Camilla continued, speaking and signing. WCHI. They want you to perform live next week. They're calling it an evening with Marcus Hill. They want to hear your story. I can't, Marcus whispered. You can, and you will. Because that person, she pointed at the threatening note, doesn't get to win. Not after everything you've survived. Marcus picked up Isaiah's birth certificate again, ran his fingers over his son's name, and suddenly, he remembered something. A moment from years ago, sitting in that shelter, Isaiah on his lap, playing a simple melody. Toca pra mim, papai, Isaiah had said in his mixed Portuguese-English toddler babble, mimicking the Brazilian family who lived down the hall. "Play for me, Daddy." And Marcus had played, for his son, not for fame or money or validation, just for the pure joy of sharing something beautiful with someone he loved. He looked up at Camilla. "If I do this, if I tell my story, everything comes out. The arrest, the conviction, Isaiah, everything." She nodded. "Everything." Marcus sat in silence, the weight of the decision crushing him. Then, slowly, he reached for his phone and opened Professor Barlow's message. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then he typed, "I'm ready to talk." The WCHI radio station sat in a converted warehouse in West Loop, all exposed brick and industrial lighting that tried too hard to look hip. Marcus stood outside on the sidewalk, staring at the neon sign above the entrance, his stomach churning with anxiety. Behind him, Camilla waited patiently, her presence the only thing keeping him from turning around and running. "You don't have to do this," she signed, though her eyes said otherwise. "Yes, I do," Marcus replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside, the lobby smelled like coffee and ambition. Young producers rushed past with headphones around their necks, tablets in hand, moving like the world would end if they stopped. A receptionist with purple lipstick and a nose ring looked up from her computer. "Marcus Hill?" He nodded, unable to find his voice. "They're ready for you in Studio B. Follow me." The hallway walls were covered with framed photographs, famous musicians who'd performed here over the years. Chance the Rapper, Wilco, local legends and national stars, all smiling at the camera like success was the easiest thing in the world. Marcus felt like an imposter walking among giants. Studio B was smaller than he'd imagined. Soundproof panels on the walls, a mixing board that looked like a spaceship control panel, and there, in the center of the room, a beautiful upright piano, not as grand as the Steinway at the conservatory, but clean and well-tuned, waiting. The host, Jasmine Chen, stood to greet him. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a warm smile that seemed genuine. "Marcus, thank you so much for coming. We're thrilled to have you." "Thank you for the opportunity," Marcus managed. But then he saw who else was in the room, and his blood turned to ice. Ethan Carrington sat in the corner, legs crossed, wearing another expensive suit, and that same predatory smile. Next to him stood a lawyer. At least Marcus assumed he was a lawyer based on the briefcase and the way he held himself like he owned the air he breathed. "What is he doing here?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. Jasmine's smile faltered. "Mr. Carrington reached out to us. He wanted to be part of the conversation, to provide context." "Context," Marcus repeated, the word tasting like poison. Ethan stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "Marcus, good to see you. I'm glad you decided to accept this invitation. Very brave of you." He pulled a document from his jacket pocket, unfolded it with deliberate slowness. "Before we begin, though, I'd like to offer you something." The lawyer stepped forward, produced a pen like a weapon. "It's a simple agreement," Ethan continued, his voice smooth as silk. "We, the Sinclair Conservatory and my foundation, will pay off your debts, all of them. Your back rent, your medical bills, everything. We'll also provide you with a generous severance package. $50,000. Tax-free." Marcus stared at the paper. The numbers swam before his eyes. $50,000 was more money than he'd seen in a decade. "In exchange," Ethan said, stepping closer, "you agree to never perform publicly again. You don't do interviews. You don't speak about the conservatory. You disappear quietly, and we all move on with our lives. You get your piece. We get ours." The room fell silent. Jasmine looked between them, her journalistic instincts clearly screaming that this was the real story. Camilla's face had gone dark with anger. "You're trying to buy my silence," Marcus said slowly. "I'm trying to buy you a future," Ethan corrected. "Look at yourself, Marcus. You're 38 years old. You're a janitor with a criminal record. This viral moment? It'll fade in a week, 2 weeks tops. Then you'll be exactly where you were before, scrubbing floors and wondering what could have been." He tapped the contract. "This is mercy. Take it." Marcus looked at the paper, at the zeros behind the 5, at the promise of security, of anonymity, of escape. Then he thought about Isaiah, about his son's small hands on a keyboard, playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with pure joy on his face, about the note Isaiah had made him promise to keep playing no matter what, about the threatening messages. about someone so desperate to keep him silent that they'd use his dead son as leverage. And suddenly Marcus understood. Ethan wasn't just afraid of embarrassment. He was afraid of something specific, something Marcus represented or knew or could reveal. Marcus picked up the contract, held it in both hands, then ripped it in half. The sound of tearing paper was thunderous in the small studio. Ethan's face went purple. The lawyer actually gasped. "I'm not for sale," Marcus said quietly. "Not anymore. You're making a mistake," Ethan hissed. "A huge mistake. I will destroy you. I will make sure every door in this city closes in your face. You'll regret." "Get out," Jasmine interrupted, her voice steel. "This is my studio, my show, and you're not welcome here anymore." The lawyer started to protest, but Jasmine was already calling security. Within minutes, Ethan and his associate were escorted out, Ethan's threats echoing down the hallway until the door cut them off. The silence that followed felt holy. "That," Jasmine said, turning to Marcus with something like awe, "was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed, and we're definitely keeping it in the broadcast." Marcus realized the microphones had been live the entire time. Everything, the bribe, the threats, the contract had been recorded. "I didn't know," he started. "I know," Jasmine said. "That's what makes it perfect. Now let's tell your real story, the one they don't want people to hear." The interview lasted 40 minutes. Marcus told everything: his childhood, the academy, the false accusation, prison, Isaiah, the years of grief and silence. Jasmine listened without interruption, her questions gentle but probing, drawing out details Marcus had never spoken aloud. Then came the moment he'd been dreading and craving in equal measure. "Will you play for us?" Jasmine asked. Marcus approached the piano like it was an old friend he'd betrayed. His hands trembled as they found the keys. For a moment, nothing came. His mind was blank, his fingers frozen. Then he closed his eyes and let himself remember. Not the pain, not the loss, but the love. The pure, uncomplicated love of a 4-year-old boy who believed his father could create magic. The melody that emerged was the same one from the conservatory, but transformed, richer, deeper. He added variations that spoke of prison bars and hospital rooms and holding a tiny body that had gone cold. He added phrases that sang of redemption, of hope found in unexpected places, of beauty emerging from ashes. The studio fell away. The microphones disappeared. There was only Marcus and the music and the ghost of his son dancing in the notes. When the final chord faded, he opened his eyes to find Jasmine crying. The sound engineer had his head in his hands. Even the security guard by the door was wiping his eyes. That, Jasmine whispered, was transcendent. The broadcast went live that evening. By midnight, it had been downloaded 3 million times. By morning, it was everywhere: CNN, NPR, even international outlets. The recording of Ethan's attempted bribe became its own scandal. Legal analysts debated witness tampering. The conservatory's board called an emergency meeting, but Marcus barely noticed. He was home, sitting in the dark, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something told him to pick up. Marcus Hill? An unfamiliar voice, older, refined. "Yes? My name is Catherine Winters. I'm the artistic director of the New York Philharmonic." She paused. "We'd like to commission you to compose an original piece, and we'd like you to perform it as our featured soloist at Lincoln Center in 3 months." Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "I know it's sudden," Catherine continued, "but I heard your performance tonight, and I heard something I haven't heard in 20 years of professional music. Truth. Raw, unfiltered truth. That's what the world needs right now. That's what we need. I don't have formal training," Marcus finally said. "I never finished." "You have something better than training. You have soul. Say yes, Marcus, please." Outside his window, Chicago glittered in the dark. Somewhere in that city, Ethan Carrington was probably plotting revenge. Somewhere, the person sending threatening messages was watching, waiting. Somewhere, all of Marcus's past mistakes and failures were lined up like dominoes, ready to fall. But for the first time in 12 years, Marcus felt something other than fear. He felt alive. "Yes," he said, "I'll do it." Camilla found it on a Tuesday afternoon while Marcus was meeting with Catherine Winters' assistant to discuss logistics for the New York performance. She'd taken a personal day from the conservatory, her first in 3 years. to help Marcus organize the chaos his life had become. Interview requests, legal consultations, musicians wanting to collaborate. His one-bedroom apartment had transformed into command central for a movement he never asked to lead. She was filing paperwork when she noticed something odd. A Facebook message from someone named Jennifer Torres sent 3 days ago, buried under hundreds of other messages Marcus hadn't had time to read. "Mr. Hill, I'm a music librarian at the Chicago Youth Academy. I think you should see something. It's about your old compositions. Please call me. It's urgent." Camilla's instincts kicked in immediately. She called the number. Jennifer answered on the second ring. "Hello? This is Camila Rodriguez calling on behalf of Marcus Hill. You sent him a message?" "Oh, thank God." Jennifer's voice trembled with nervous energy. "I wasn't sure if he'd see it. Listen, I've been working in the Academy's archives for 15 years. After that video went viral, I started looking through old student files, just curiosity, you know? And I found Marcus's portfolio from 2003. Camilla's heart began to race. "And? There's a composition in there. Elegy for Tomorrow." It dated April 2003 with Marcus's signature and his teacher's approval stamp. "It's beautiful, complex, clearly the work of someone gifted." Jennifer paused. "But here's the thing. That exact same composition was registered with the U.S. Copyright Office in 2005 under a different name. Ethan Carrington." The room tilted. Camilla grabbed the edge of Marcus's kitchen table to steady herself. "Are you sure?" she managed. "Positive. I cross-referenced everything. Same key signature, same time signature, same melodic structure, same harmonic progressions. It's not similar. It's identical. Note for note. Ethan Carrington built his entire early reputation on that piece. It got him into Berkeley. It won him the prestigious Hutchins Prize. Music critics called it a masterwork of emotional sophistication from a prodigy. But Marcus wrote it 2 years earlier. Camilla's mind raced. "Why would you risk your job telling us this?" Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm tired of watching rich people steal from talented kids who don't have the connections to fight back. I've seen it happen too many times. And after everything Marcus has been through," her voice hardened, "he deserves the truth. They all do. Can you send me copies of everything?" "Already done. Check your email. And Marcus? Tell him to be careful. The Carrington family has a lot of power in this city. A lot of lawyers. If he goes public with this, they'll come at him with everything they have." The call ended. Camilla opened her email with shaking hands. There it was. A scanned PDF of Marcus's original composition, his handwriting across the top. Elegy for Tomorrow. Original composition by Marcus E. Hill, April 14, 2003. And beneath it, the copyright registration document from 2005, listing Ethan Carrington as the sole composer. The theft was irrefutable, documented, provable. When Marcus returned home 2 hours later, Camilla was sitting at his kitchen table surrounded by printed documents, her laptop open, her face a mask of controlled fury. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately. She turned the laptop to face him. "Read this." Marcus read, then read again. His face went through a dozen expressions: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally a rage so pure it seemed to burn the air around him. "He stole it," Marcus whispered. "That son of a bitch stole my music." "It gets worse," Camilla said, pulling up another document. "I did some research. That composition won Ethan the Hutchins Prize in 2006, $25,000, a recording contract with Decca Records, performances at major venues. Critics compared him to John Williams, to Philip Glass. That one piece launched his entire career in music before he moved into business." Marcus was pacing now, his hands clenched into fists. "I wrote that piece the month before I was arrested. I wrote it for my mother. She'd been diagnosed with diabetes and I was terrified of losing her. Every note was about love and fear and holding on to someone you know you might lose." His voice broke. "And he took it. He took my grief and made it his success story." "There's more," Camilla signed grimly. She pulled up an article from the Chicago Tribune archives, dated 2003. "Look at the date of your arrest. June 2003. 2 months after you completed Elegy for Tomorrow. And look who served as a character witness against you at trial." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. His blood turned to ice. Professor Gerald Whitmore, the teacher who'd testified that Marcus was obsessed with equipment he couldn't afford, who'd painted him as a troubled, potentially dangerous student. had been Ethan Carrington's private piano instructor for 5 years. The connection was documented in the conservatory's own records. It was planned, Marcus said slowly, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. The whole thing. They framed me to get me out of the way, to steal my work, to destroy any chance I had of... He couldn't finish. His legs gave out and he sank into a chair. Camilla knelt beside him, her hands on his shoulders. We have evidence now. We can take this to the media, to lawyers. We can destroy him the way he destroyed you. Marcus looked at the documents spread across his table. Proof of theft. Proof of conspiracy. Proof that his entire adult life, the arrest, the prison sentence, the years of poverty and grief, had been orchestrated by a rich kid who wanted what Marcus had created. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I warned you. Now everyone will pay the price. Then another text, this one with an attachment. A photograph. Marcus opened it and felt his heart stop. It was a picture of Camilla, taken from across the street from the conservatory. She was leaving work, unaware she was being watched. Written across the image in red text, "She's helping you." That was a mistake. Marcus showed Camilla the phone. Her face went pale, then set with determination. They're trying to scare us, she signed. It won't work. But Marcus wasn't so sure. Whoever was behind these threats had resources, connections, information they shouldn't have. And now they were threatening Camilla, the one person who'd stood by him when everyone else wanted him erased. Another message arrived. This time, a video file. Marcus hesitated, then pressed play. The video showed the interior of an office, expensive furniture, awards on the walls, a view of downtown Chicago through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan Carrington's office, and there was Ethan himself, sitting at his desk, speaking directly to the camera. Marcus, Ethan said, his voice calm and cold. By now you've probably discovered the truth about Elegy for Tomorrow. Congratulations. You're not as stupid as I thought. But here's what you don't understand. You can't win. I have the best lawyers money can buy. I have judges who owe me favors. I have media connections who will bury any story that makes me look bad. He leaned forward, his face filling the screen. And I have something else. Information about the night your son died. About why you weren't at the hospital when he took his last breath. About where you really were and what you were really doing. Information that would destroy whatever sympathy the public has for you. Marcus felt like he'd been stabbed. Isaiah. Ethan was threatening to weaponize Isaiah's death. So here's my offer, Ethan continued. Drop this. Walk away from New York. Disappear back into obscurity where you belong. Do that, and I'll let you keep your grief private. But if you go public with these accusations, if you try to destroy my reputation, I'll make sure the whole world knows what kind of father you really were. I'll make sure Isaiah's memory is attached to your shame forever. The video ended. Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because Ethan wasn't bluffing. On the night Isaiah died, Marcus hadn't been at the hospital. He'd been somewhere else, doing something he'd never forgiven himself for, something only a handful of people knew about, something that would make every ounce of public sympathy evaporate if it came to light. What is he talking about? Camilla signed, her face full of concern. Marcus couldn't look at her. Something I've never told anyone. Something I'll take to my grave. Marcus, no. His voice was sharp, final. Some secrets stay buried. That's one of them. Camilla stared at him, hurt and confusion in her eyes. But she didn't push. She just gathered the documents, her movements careful and deliberate. What do we do? She signed. Marcus looked at the evidence spread before him. Proof of theft. Proof of conspiracy. The key to reclaiming his stolen past and exposing the man who'd destroyed his life. And all it would cost was Isaiah's memory. He picked up his phone and opened Twitter. In the search bar, he typed, Ethan Carrington plagiarism. Took a screenshot of Jennifer's documents. His finger hovered over the tweet button. One click. That's all it would take. Justice, vindication, truth. But at what cost? New York City swallowed Marcus whole the moment he stepped off the Greyhound bus at Port Authority. The noise, the crowds, the vertical maze of buildings that blocked out the sky. It all felt like a different planet compared to Chicago. He'd taken the bus instead of flying because flying felt too permanent. Too much like someone who belonged in this world of prestigious orchestras and Lincoln Center stages. Camilla had wanted to come with him, but Marcus insisted she stay. After the threats, after the photograph, he couldn't risk putting her in more danger. She'd protested through angry signs and tearful arguments, but eventually relented. Now, standing alone in Manhattan with a duffel bag and a folder of sheet music, Marcus felt the weight of isolation settle over him like a lead blanket. The New York Philharmonic rehearsed at David Geffen Hall, a massive complex that made the Sinclair Conservatory look like a corner bodega. Marcus showed his ID to security, received a visitor's badge that felt like an imposter's mark, and followed signs to rehearsal room C. The door was heavy, institutional. Through the small window he could see them. The orchestra. 60 professional musicians tuning instruments, adjusting stands, chatting casually like this was just another day at the office. For them, it was. For Marcus, it felt like walking into a firing squad. He pushed open the door. The conversation died immediately. Catherine Winters stood at the conductor's podium, her silver hair pulled into an elegant bun, her presence commanding despite her small stature. She smiled when she saw Marcus, but the warmth didn't quite reach her eyes. Behind her smile was assessment, calculation, the practical concern of someone who'd taken a massive professional risk inviting an unknown ex-convict janitor to perform at one of the world's most prestigious venues. Marcus, welcome. She gestured to the piano positioned at stage left. We're eager to begin. Marcus walked through the orchestra like Moses through the Red Sea, musicians parting, staring, whispering just loud enough for him to hear the judgments. That's him? He doesn't look like much. This is who's playing our hall? He kept his eyes forward, his jaw clenched, his hands gripping the folder so tight the edges crumpled. He sat at the piano, a gorgeous Steinway concert grand that probably cost more than every instrument he'd ever touched combined. The bench was perfect height. The keys were pristine, responsive. Everything was professional, polished, perfect. Everything except him. We'll start with a simple run-through, Catherine said, raising her baton, just to get a feel for the dynamics. Your composition, the weight of silence. Movement 1. When you're ready. Marcus placed his hands on the keys. They trembled. He closed his eyes, tried to find that place he'd accessed at the conservatory, at the radio station. That space where music existed beyond fear and doubt. Nothing came. His mind was blank. His fingers felt wooden, disconnected from his body. Behind him, he could feel 60 pairs of eyes boring into his back, waiting, judging. He tried to start 3 times. Each time, his hands froze. Take your time, Catherine said gently, but Marcus heard the concern underneath. A voice came from the violin section, female, young, dripping with disdain. Is this a joke? We're professionals. We don't have time for amateur hour. Marcus's eyes snapped open. He turned to locate the speaker. A woman in her late 20s sat third chair, first violin. Dark hair, sharp features, hostile eyes. She held her violin like a weapon, her expression pure contempt. Chloe, Catherine warned. That's enough. No, it's not enough. Chloe stood, her voice rising. You brought in this viral sensation to play Lincoln Center while actual trained musicians can't get callbacks. He hasn't performed professionally in 2 decades. He's a janitor who got lucky with a cell phone video. And now we're supposed to follow his lead. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Some musicians looked away. Others nodded in agreement. Marcus felt shame burn through him like acid. She was right. He didn't belong here. This was a mistake. I'm sorry, he said quietly, standing. I shouldn't have come. Sit down, Marcus. Catherine's voice cut through the room like a knife. She turned to Chloe, her face steel. You want to talk about qualifications? Marcus Hill composed this piece from lived experience most of us couldn't imagine. He survived things that would break half the people in this room. And yes, he's rusty. Yes, he needs work. That's why we rehearse. So either support your fellow musician or leave. Your choice. Chloe's face flushed red, but she didn't leave. She sat down, radiating anger. Now, Catherine said, turning back to Marcus. From the top. And Marcus, don't play for them. Play for whoever you wrote this for. Marcus sat back down, closed his eyes. And this time, instead of trying to impress, instead of trying to be worthy, he just remembered. Isaiah, 4 years old, hospital bed, the machines beeping their countdown to goodbye. The music came. It wasn't perfect. He fumbled transitions, missed dynamics. But it was real, raw. The orchestra joined in, tentative at first, then finding the emotional current Marcus had created. The first movement built slowly, like grief accumulating weight, until it crashed in a cascade of pain that left several musicians blinking back tears. When it ended, the silence was profound. Catherine nodded slowly. "That's what I heard on the radio. That's what we're going to share with the world." The rehearsal continued for 3 hours. By the end, Marcus's hands ached, his head pounded, and his heart felt scraped raw. Most of the orchestra had warmed to him. They asked questions about his composition choices, offered suggestions, treated him like a colleague. But not Chloe. She remained cold, hostile, playing mechanically and leaving the moment Catherine dismissed them. Marcus was packing his music when he heard footsteps behind him. "Why did you agree to this?" Chloe stood in the doorway, her violin case in hand, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "New York, Lincoln Center, all of it. Why say yes when you clearly don't think you deserve to be here?" Marcus had no answer. Chloe stepped closer, her eyes blazing with an emotion he couldn't name. "My father was in Stateville," she said quietly. 2004 to 2009. He wrote me letters about a man who taught piano to inmates, who gave lessons using a broken keyboard in the rec room, who told stories about music like it was religion. Her voice cracked. "That man gave my father hope when he had nothing, taught him to read music, helped him believe he was more than his worst mistake." Marcus's breath caught. "What was your father's name?" "David Chen." She wiped her eyes roughly. "He got out in 2009, clean for 3 years, then relapsed. Overdosed in 2012. I was 14. She stared at Marcus with a naked pain. "You gave him those years of hope. Those letters he sent me about music, about beauty existing even in hell. Those are all I have left of him being something other than an addict." "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," Chloe said fiercely. "Be better. You walked away from music after prison. You gave up. My father never got that chance. He died still believing in what you taught him. So don't you dare waste this opportunity feeling unworthy. You owe it to everyone you touched in that place. You owe it to my father." She left without another word. Marcus stood alone in the empty rehearsal room, Chloe's words echoing in his head. He thought about all the men he'd taught in Stateville, guys serving double-digit sentences for mistakes made in moments of desperation. He'd shown them that beauty could exist anywhere, that creativity couldn't be imprisoned. Then he'd gotten out, and immediately imprisoned himself. Built walls of shame and fear that no judge ever mandated. His phone buzzed. A text from Camilla. "How did it go?" Marcus started to type, "Fine," then stopped. Instead, he called her. When she answered, he heard the concern in her breathing. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about the night Isaiah died, about what Ethan's threatening to expose." "You don't have to," Camilla started. "Yes, I do." Marcus sat on the piano bench, the room's acoustics making his voice sound small and far away. "Isaiah had been sick for 3 days. Fever, coughing. I didn't have insurance, couldn't afford the ER. I was giving him over-the-counter medicine, praying it would pass." He swallowed hard. "That night, his fever spiked. I knew he needed a hospital, but I didn't have money for the ambulance, so I left him with a neighbor and went to a pawn shop to try to sell my keyboard, the one thing I owned worth anything." Camila was silent on the other end. The shop was closed. By the time I got back, the neighbor had called 911. They took Isaiah to county. I got there 40 minutes later. His voice broke. He died while I was gone, trying to get money to save him. I wasn't there. I wasn't holding his hand. I was pawning the last piece of my soul for $300 that wouldn't have made a difference anyway. "Marcus," Camilla's voice was gentle, devastated. "That doesn't make you a bad father. That makes you a desperate man in an impossible situation. The public won't see it that way. They'll see a father who left his dying son alone, and they'll be right." "No," Camilla said firmly. "They'll see a broken system that forces people to choose between their dignity and their children's lives. You're not the villain in that story, Marcus. You're the victim." Marcus closed his eyes. "I can't let Ethan win, but I can't destroy Isaiah's memory either." "Then don't choose," Camilla said. "Play, compose. Let your music tell the truth. Let the weight of silence speak for every parent who's ever had to make an impossible choice. That's how you honor Isaiah. That's how you beat Ethan, not by destroying him, but by refusing to let him silence you." Marcus sat in the empty rehearsal hall long after the call ended, Camilla's words settling into his bones like truth finally finding its home. The night of the performance, Lincoln Center glowed like a jewel against the Manhattan skyline. Spotlights swept across David Geffen Hall's modernist facade while limousines deposited elegantly dressed patrons onto red carpets. Women in evening gowns and men in tuxedos streamed through the entrance, their jewelry catching light, their laughter floating on the cold November air. This was New York society at its finest. Old money, new money, celebrities, politicians, critics whose reviews could make or break careers. Marcus watched from a side entrance, his hands trembling so badly he had to shove them in his pockets. He wore a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit, shoes that pinched his feet, a bow tie Camilla had tied for him over FaceTime because he'd never learned how. He looked the part, but inside he was still that scared kid from the South Side, still that inmate who'd played phantom melodies on concrete walls, still that father who'd failed when it mattered most. 5 minutes, Mr. Hill. A stage manager appeared at his elbow, clipboard in hand, headset microphone active. She was young, efficient, treating this like any other performance. For her, it was. For Marcus, it felt like walking to the electric chair. Backstage, the orchestra was already assembled. Musicians tuned instruments, adjusted music stands, went through their pre-performance rituals. Catherine Winters stood at the podium reviewing the score one final time, her face a mask of professional concentration. When she saw Marcus, she offered a tight smile that was meant to be reassuring but only amplified his terror. Chloe sat in the first violin section, her instrument resting against her shoulder. When their eyes met, she nodded once, a gesture of solidarity, of shared understanding. She'd barely spoken to him during the final rehearsals, but her playing had transformed. Where before she'd been technically perfect but emotionally distant, now she poured feeling into every note. Her father's ghost played through her fingers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcement echoed through the hall. "Please take your seats. Tonight's performance will begin in 2 minutes." Marcus moved to the wings where he could see the audience filling the hall. 2,600 seats rising in tiers of cream and gold, every single one occupied. The who's who of New York's cultural elite. And there, in the front row, sat Ethan Carrington. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. His silver hair was perfectly styled. His expression was serene, confident, the face of a man who'd already won. Next to him sat his wife. Marcus had seen her in society photos, and several board members from various cultural institutions. Ethan's presence here was a power play, a message. "I own this world, and you're just visiting." Marcus felt his resolve waver. He could still leave. Could claim illness, mechanical failure, anything. Could disappear back to Chicago and resume his invisible life. Then he saw her, Camilla, 5th row, aisle seat. She'd flown in this morning despite his protests, despite the danger, despite everything. She wore a simple black dress and her warmest smile. When she saw him watching, she signed, "You've got this." The house lights dimmed. The audience fell silent. That particular silence of anticipation that only exists in concert halls, where 2,000 people collectively hold their breath. Catherine raised her baton. The orchestra lifted their instruments as one. Marcus walked onto the stage. The applause started immediately, polite, reserved, the kind given to anyone appearing on this prestigious stage. Marcus sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and stared at the keys like they held the secrets of the universe. The Steinway gleamed under the spotlights. His reflection stared back from the polished surface. A black man who wasn't supposed to be here, performing music he wasn't supposed to have survived long enough to create. He placed his hands on the keys, closed his eyes, and let the first movement begin. The weight of silence. Prison. The opening notes were discordant, jarring, minor seconds and tritones that created an atmosphere of claustrophobia and fear. The orchestra entered with low, grinding strings that sounded like metal doors slamming, like chains dragging across concrete. Marcus's right hand played a simple melody over the chaos, a song trying to exist in a place designed to crush beauty. The music built slowly, relentlessly. Percussion added sounds Marcus had recorded in Stateville with permission. The clang of meal trays, the echo of footsteps in empty corridors, the distant sound of men shouting through bars. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't pretty music. This was truth. Then came the transition. A sudden silence so complete it was deafening. In that silence, a single note from Chloe's violin. Pure, clear, heartbreaking. The theme of hope. The thing that shouldn't exist but does anyway. Luto, lament. The second movement began with Marcus's left hand playing a funeral march, while his right hand wove Isaiah's favorite lullaby through the darkness. Twinkle, twinkle, little star transformed into something ancient and mournful, like a spiritual sung in an empty church. The orchestra swelled behind him, waves of grief, building, crashing, receding, building again. On the screen behind the orchestra, images appeared. Marcus hadn't known Catherine planned this, hadn't approved it, but there they were, photographs of his life. His mother, young and smiling, holding a toddler Marcus at an upright piano. Marcus at 17, accepting his scholarship to the youth academy. Then the gap, 6 years of prison represented by a single image, bars casting shadows. Then Isaiah, beautiful, gap-toothed Isaiah at the keyboard, hands poised like his father's. The audience gasped. Several people started crying immediately. Marcus played harder, faster, the grief pouring out of him like blood from a wound that had never healed. The orchestra matched his intensity. Cellos sobbing, French horns keening, timpani rolling like thunder. Chloe's violin soared above it all, singing David Chen's hope, Isaiah's innocence, every father's love for a child they couldn't save. The movement climaxed in a cascade of notes that sounded like a heart-shattering, then fell away to a single repeated chord, soft, resigned, endless. Marcus opened his eyes. The entire front section of the audience was weeping openly. Even the critics, those hardened arbiters of taste, had tears streaming down their faces. Ethan Carrington sat frozen, his expression unreadable, his hands clenched in his lap. 3. Renacimento. Rebirth. The final movement started so quietly people leaned forward to hear it. A simple major chord, then another, building blocks of hope. Marcus's hands moved gently now, reverently, playing the melody he'd improvised that first day at the conservatory, the one that had started everything. But this time it was transformed, enriched. The orchestra entered with supporting harmonies that lifted the theme higher and higher. Woodwinds added birdsong. Strings created the sense of sunrise, of new beginnings. The music swelled until it filled every corner of the massive hall, until it felt like the building itself was singing. The images on the screen changed. The conservatory video, Marcus playing with tears streaming down his face. Then images of him teaching in Stateville, surrounded by inmates learning to read music. Then recent photos, Marcus with Camilla laughing. Marcus at the piano, composing. Marcus alive again. The final chord held for what felt like an eternity. Every instrument playing fortissimo, Marcus's hands spread across the entire range of the keyboard. Sound so big it was almost physical. Then, gradually, it faded. Softer, softer, until only one note remained. A high C from Chloe's violin, pure as crystal, lasting impossibly long. Then silence. Complete, absolute silence. Marcus lifted his hands from the keys, opened his eyes. For 3 seconds no one moved, no one breathed. Then the audience exploded. People leapt to their feet, applauding so hard their hands must have hurt, shouting bravo, through tears. The ovation rolled through the hall like thunder, building and building until the sound became overwhelming. Musicians in the orchestra stood and applauded Marcus. Catherine Winters had tears streaming down her face, her baton forgotten in her hand. Marcus stood on shaking legs, bowed, and looked out at the audience, at 2,000 people acknowledging his pain, his survival, his art. At Camilla in the 5th row signing I love you through her own tears. At critics already typing furiously on their phones, reviews that would call this performance transcendent, devastating, the most important musical moment of the decade. And at Ethan Carrington, standing slowly in the front row, not applauding, just standing. His face was pale, his eyes wet, his expression something Marcus had never seen before. Shame. Without a word, without acknowledging anyone around him, Ethan walked down the aisle and out of the theater. The audience barely noticed, too caught up in their ovation. But Marcus saw, watched the man who'd stolen his past, his music, his future, walk away in silence. The ovation continued for 8 minutes. 8 minutes of validation, of recognition, of being seen as fully human for the first time in 20 years. When it finally ended, When the last audience member filed out, still wiping their eyes, Marcus sat alone at the piano. The stage crew worked around him, breaking down equipment, but no one disturbed him. He played one final note, the same C that had started his journey at the conservatory. It rang pure and true in the empty hall. 3 months after Lincoln Center, Marcus stood in front of an abandoned warehouse on Chicago's west side, staring at the transformed building like he was seeing a mirage. The brick facade had been cleaned, the broken windows replaced with energy-efficient glass. A new sign hung above the entrance, letters carved in wood and backlit with warm light. The Isaiah Hill Center for Soul Music. His son's name. In public. Forever. Camilla stood beside him, her hand in his, both of them bundled against the February cold. "You ready?" she signed. Marcus wasn't sure. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind, recording contracts, interview requests, teaching offers from prestigious conservatories. The New York Times had run a front-page feature, From Prison to Carnegie Hall. Marcus Hill's Unlikely Redemption. His composition had been nominated for a Pulitzer. Streaming numbers for The Weight of Silence had exceeded 10 million plays. But this music center, was what mattered most. A place where formerly incarcerated people and at-risk youth could learn music for free. Where talent mattered more than background. Where someone like 17-year-old Marcus could have found refuge before the system devoured him. The funding had come from unexpected sources. Anonymous donors, crowdfunding campaigns, foundations dedicated to criminal justice reform and arts education. They'd raised $2 million in 8 weeks. Enough to renovate the building, hire staff, purchase instruments, and operate for 3 years. "Let's go inside," Marcus said, his breath forming clouds in the winter air. The interior was perfect. Rehearsal rooms with soundproofing, a small performance space with a modest stage, practice rooms equipped with keyboards, guitars, drums, a recording studio with professional equipment, and in the main hall, positioned like an altar, a refurbished Steinway grand piano. Not as magnificent as the ones at Lincoln Center or the conservatory, but beautiful and perfectly tuned. Students would arrive next week, 40 to start, ranging from teenagers on probation to middle-aged ex-convicts trying to rebuild their lives. The staff consisted of professional musicians who'd volunteered their time, music therapists, and social workers. It was everything Marcus had dreamed of but never believed possible. He was walking through the building, running his hand along walls that still smelled like fresh paint, when he heard the front door open. Footsteps echoed in the lobby. Marcus returned to find someone he never expected to see again. Professor Henry Barlow stood in the entrance, leaning heavily on his cane, his white hair windswept, his eyes bright with emotion. At 83, he looked fragile but determined. Behind him stood 2 younger people, former students, Marcus guessed, helping their elderly teacher navigate the icy sidewalks. "Marcus," Barlow said, his voice thick, "I've been looking for you for 20 years, and here you are, building something magnificent." They embraced, 2 men separated by age and circumstance but connected by music's invisible thread. Barlow pulled back, studying Marcus's face like he was memorizing it. "I knew," the old professor said. "The moment I heard you play at the conservatory, I knew it was you. That melody, I'd only heard it once when you were 17, but I never forgot. You had something special, something that couldn't be taught. You testified at my trial," Marcus said quietly. "For the defense, I never got to thank you. I told them you were incapable of theft, that you had more integrity in your little finger than most people had in their entire bodies. But they didn't listen." Barlow's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you from that." "You gave me hope," Marcus replied. "You were the only one who believed me. That mattered more than you know." They talked for an hour, Barlow sharing stories of searching for Marcus after his release, following dead-end leads, checking homeless shelters and halfway houses. He'd never stopped believing Marcus would return to music eventually. "This place," Barlow said, gesturing around the center, "this is your real masterpiece. Not the composition, beautiful as it is. This, giving others the chance you almost lost." After Barlow left, Marcus sat alone in the main hall, processing the professor's words. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting geometric shadows across the floor. He was about to lock up when the door opened again. Ethan Carrington stepped inside. Marcus's entire body tensed. They hadn't spoken since Lincoln Center, hadn't acknowledged each other's existence. Ethan looked different, thinner, older, his silver hair showing more gray. He carried a manila envelope and wore an expression Marcus had never seen on him before: humility. "I know I have no right to be here," Ethan said, his voice stripped of its usual arrogance. "I know you probably want me to leave, but I needed to do this in person." He held out the envelope. Marcus didn't take it immediately. "It's the copyright transfer for Elegy for Tomorrow," Ethan continued. "All rights revert to you, the original composer. I've also liquidated the profits, every dollar I made from that piece over 20 years. It's in there. $347,000. It's yours. It was always yours." Marcus stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Why now?" "Because I heard you play." Ethan's voice cracked. "At Lincoln Center. I heard what you created from the pain I caused. I heard your son's laughter in those notes. I heard your mother's love. I heard everything I stole from you transmuted into something so beautiful it made me physically ill." He wiped his eyes roughly. "I've been successful, wealthy, respected, but I've never created anything that mattered. I've never touched anyone's soul. I just took from people who could and pretended their gifts were mine. You destroyed my life," Marcus said, his voice steady but hard. "You and Whitmore. You framed me, stole my music, cost me 6 years in prison. Cost me time with my mother before she died. Maybe cost me Isaiah too. If I'd had the education, the connections, the money you stole from me, maybe I could have saved him. I know." Ethan's face crumbled. "I know. And I can't change any of that. I can't give you back those years. Can't bring back the people you lost. All I can do is this." He set the envelope on a nearby table. "And tell you the truth. I was a mediocre musician with a massive ego and more money than talent. You terrified me because you had everything I wanted. Natural ability, genuine passion, authenticity. So I destroyed you to protect my fragile sense of self. And I've been paying for it every day since. Not legally, not financially, but in here." He pressed his hand to his chest. "In knowing what I really am." Marcus looked at this man who'd haunted his nightmares for 20 years. This man who'd orchestrated his downfall and stolen his art. And instead of the rage he expected to feel, Marcus felt something else. Pity. "I forgave you," Marcus said quietly. "The day I played at the conservatory. The day I stopped making music about my pain and started making it about love. Holding on to anger was killing me. So I let it go. Not for you, for me, for Isaiah, for everyone who still needed me to be whole." Ethan's tears fell freely now. "How? How can you forgive that?" "Because unforgiveness was another prison," Marcus said. "And I'd already served my time. I wasn't going to sentence myself to more just to make you suffer." He picked up the envelope, felt its weight. "I'll accept this, not because I need your money, but because it belongs to students who'll come through these doors. Kids who need instruments and lessons and hope. Your money will do more good here than it ever did in your bank account." "Thank you," Ethan whispered. He turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth, you were always the better musician. From the very beginning. And now you're the better man too." After he left, Marcus sat at the Steinway, alone in the silent building. He played softly, improvising, letting his fingers explore melodies without purpose or destination. Outside, Chicago's winter twilight painted the sky in shades of gray and gold. Camilla arrived as the last light faded. She sat beside him on the piano bench, her body warm against his. "Ethan came," Marcus said. She nodded. "I know. I saw him leaving. What did he want? To give back what he stole, and to ask for something he didn't deserve. Did you give it to him?" Marcus thought about that, about forgiveness, about how letting go of hatred didn't mean forgetting or excusing, but simply refusing to let the past poison the future. "I gave him what he needed," Marcus said, "not what he deserved. There's a difference." Camilla leaned her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, surrounded by instruments waiting to be played, by empty rooms that would soon fill with music and laughter and second chances. "Isaiah would be proud," she signed. Marcus closed his eyes, and for the first time in 12 years he could think of his son without the crushing weight of grief. Just love. Pure, uncomplicated love. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think he would be." Outside, snow began to fall, covering the city in white. Inside, Marcus played one final melody. Not for an audience, not for validation, not even for himself. just for the simple joy of making something beautiful exist in a world that desperately needed beauty. The last note faded into silence, and in that silence Marcus heard it clearly. His son's laughter, his mother's voice, the sound of chains breaking, the whisper of freedom finally, fully claimed. Sometimes the soul just needs to be heard, and sometimes hearing it is enough. Marcus Hill's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we've built. How many talented souls are scrubbing floors right now? Their gifts buried under the weight of a system that values pedigree over passion, wealth over worth. How many second chances do we deny because someone's past doesn't fit our narrative of redemption? And perhaps most importantly, could you have forgiven what Marcus forgave? Could you have stood on that stage after everything that was stolen from you and chosen love over revenge, creation over destruction, hope over bitterness? Marcus didn't just reclaim his music that night at Lincoln Center. He reclaimed his humanity. He proved that our worst moments don't define us. Our response to them does. The real question isn't whether Marcus deserved his redemption. It's whether we have the courage to offer grace to those society has deemed unworthy, to see genius in unexpected places, to believe that transformation is possible even after the deepest falls. Because somewhere right now there's another Marcus Hill, someone brilliant and broken waiting for permission to be seen again. Will you be the person who looks past the uniform and sees the soul? Will you be the voice that says play when everyone else says know your place? That choice, that moment of recognition changes everything, not just for them, for all of us. If this story moved you, if Marcus's journey reminded you that second chances matter and that forgiveness is the ultimate act of freedom, then subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge, inspire, and transform. Hit like to support content that celebrates the resilience of the human spirit, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to reclaim what was stolen, to forgive what seems unforgivable, to play the music that's been silenced too long. Because every soul deserves to be heard, and every story of redemption makes the next one possible.